Hello everybody, welcome back to the Rebel Chum channel. Today we're going to take a look at the Saberforge Xiphos. The Saberforge Xiphos was a one-time offer release, and I think actually I should be more correct, they have done two releases of the Saberforge Xiphos, but not in an official way. You only could get your hands on the Xiphos when you did a purchase over $500 during a certain period of the year, when they had this as a free empty hilt giveaway saber that you will get with your order. So it was a very particular order that you had to make, and a specific amount, and then you could get your hands on the Xiphos. Now the Xiphos is proclaimed to be a Saberforge Gladius V1, but I have some remarks about that and I don't fully agree with that, and I will get into that in a second. So let's start taking a close-up look at this fantastic hilt. So it's a really cool hilt. It looks exactly the same or almost identical to the Saberforge Gladius version 1. The pommel is different. This is the pommel that is the same as the Saberforge ASP Gladius, or the newer Saberforge Gladius 2015 model. That is the revised and current model that you can find on the website. Now, first thing, this pommel has two things. This has these vents, vertical vents, as you can see. This was not available on the original Gladius. This is something that came on the 2015 Gladius and the ASP Gladius. But both ASP Gladius and the newer 2015 Gladius has less threads, has only like 2 threads. This one has long threads. That is something that the original Gladius also had. So this is a hybrid pommel that is in between the ASP Gladius and the newer 2015 Gladius and the old one. So you have the vent here for sound, and it's held in place by a Caesar clip. And before I miss out too much, I also want to point out I bought this saber second hand because it's hard to get in terms of from the website. You only can get it during certain actions they did when you make a certain amount of purchase. So from that perspective, you can't find it just on the website anymore. You just have to buy purchase it second hand. Now it has a stun setup, so it just has an 18650 battery with a Kenningston battery holder inside of that. Nothing really special. But there's some things about this particular hilt that I want to point out. So you can see, if you see my first Saberforge Gladius V1 unboxing and full review, you can see that the cover tech wheel hole is also in the threads, but this particular Xiphos hilt has more threads going into the hilt than the original V1. Also, it's a little bit hard to see, but the inside is very rough compared to the V1. Let's see, where's my light? Here is it. Let's see if I can show you. A little bit harder to see. It also has ridges, so you see this ridge here behind the in front of the red wire. That's the first ridge, and then you see another ridge much deeper inside the hilt. That's also something lacking on the original Gladius. So in terms of the inside, it's not particularly exactly as the original Gladius from 2011-2012. So it's already slightly different in that perspective. This has a very, very ugly purple leather wrap, which is going to be replaced for something decent. I just don't like the look of it, but I purchased second hand, so that's why I just stick with that. So it's of course in the all-weathering, Saberforge all-weathering look. Then we have the pommel with the cover tech wheel here. A lot of people claim this is a one-piece hilt, like the V1 from the Gladius from 2011-12, but I will come with a point in a moment, and I don't think it's particularly a one-piece hilt. So it has this choke point, just like with the V1 Gladius. It has this section here that is milled out. It's not as deep as with the V1. This part here is a little bit less deep. Of course, it has a latching switch, and the nice thing about this hilt design is even the latching switch is all flush within the hilt, so it doesn't stick out. That's good for spinning or Anything else you want to do? Well, let me just adjust the screen here a little bit. And then we have the retention screw for the LED. And with the Xiphos, actually these parts here are not as sharp as on the Saberforge Gladius V1 because they did some chamfering here. So we have the choke points here during in the thin neck-ish portion, and then we have the emitter section. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of a chunk out of this alloy here. You see it chipped out of that. I don't know what happened there. I bought it second hand, so it's really a bit unfortunate that this happened. I think the previous owner tightened something too tight or something. It looks like it's never been used actually, but I don't know what happened, maybe during transportation, but there's a chunk out of there. And that's also leading me to some suspicion that I have about this hilt. And then we have the blade plug. This is the newer blade plug that Saberforge recently introduced, I believe in somewhere in end of 2016, which is their CNC milled cut printing this system, the device things, I don't know how to call it. Let me get a hex screw. I'm gonna take out the blade plug here. So blade plug is held in place by the retention screw that's unfortunately a little bit skewed. Oh, wrong one. That's for Vader's Vault. Let me get the correct one. Sorry guys, a little bit amateuristic, but hey, we do it on the fly, right? It's a little bit new video format. We have to get used to that. The edits will be a little bit less, and that's for a very good reason, because then I can make much more videos in a shorter time frame and show you guys more. So let's go up again. So this is a really long blade plug. Oh, and the reason for this really long blade plug is because the Saberforge Gladius has a deep blade socket. So this is a very standard blade plug, not very special at all. And then we have the pommel section here, or emitter section here, really nice. And then we have the inside of the LED socket or blade socket, and you can see it's quite rough in the inside. Actually, it's not smooth out at all. And I actually have a suspicion here, or I suspect something with this hilt. If you look carefully, you see a seam here. There's a seam running all the way here, and they have buffed it out and tried to hide it, but this seam goes all the way here, and further I cannot really follow it, but I think it's going all the way here. I actually think that this hilt is a recast of a Saberforge original V1 Gladius. And I think what they did is they cut a V1 Gladius in half and made alloy recasts of it. And I think this is an alloy recast. And I think that falls in line with this piece being chipped out. I think the integrity of this hilt is not as strong as the one that has been milled out of a CNC block like the V1 has. I really suspect this is a recast they did in alloy, of course, but it's definitely not a one piece. Well, you can say it's a one piece, but it wasn't a one piece because there's definitely a line going across the whole hilt. So I know for a fact that this wasn't originally milled out of a single block of alloy. I think it was too costly. Saberforge decided to come with a cheaper alternative for this hilt, and they tried to go through a recasting method, and I think that's why they had an overstock of these hilts, because I think the integrity and the quality isn't that high compared to having it CNC milled out of a solid block of alloy. I think it was an experiment of them, and I think that's why they stepped away from it and went the ASP route and redesigned the Gladius by having different threaded parts. I think that was cheaper, less labor intensive way to do it than this recasting process. So if you ask me, I highly suspect the Xiphos was a little bit of a failed project, and they tried to cheapen out on new methods to make more of these sabers, and I didn't think that worked out too well. So they have a whole overstock. They didn't want to sell it retail on their shop. So they gave it as a free saber if you purchase something over $500 US. Now, please debate with me if you think that's true or not, but I really suspect that is actually the case with this hilt. So I would say this is a lesser version of the Saberforge Gladius. In this case, the blade depth is actually 2.5 inches, where my original V1 was 2 inches, and that's not particular because the dimension of the hilt is different. I think the person that installed the LED unit put the LED unit deeper, so it's more, the retention screw is more on the edge of the top of the LED unit rather than in the middle or the bottom of the LED unit. So I think that's why it gives us a little bit more blade depth than with the V1. Overall, it's a really nice saber. Of course, it's just it feels and handles like a Saberforge Gladius. Of course, it feels a little bit lighter. Actually, it feels quite a bit lighter than the V1 Gladius, and I don't think it's only because this is a stunt setup and it lacks a saber core soundboard. I also think because it's a recast, the material used is just thinner, different than the original Gladius that is was milled out of a single piece alloy. So to put proof to the pudding, we're gonna measure this saber up, and let's do that. Now, last time the other Gladius that I reviewed also was without a blade plug, so I'm not gonna install it. Okay, actually that's kind of surprising. It's actually very close to the Gladius that we reviewed earlier, the V1. It's actually just off by around 10 gram, which, yeah, that would make sense for the addition of the soundboard. So in this case, I'm mistaken. I really felt in the hand it felt lighter than the original V1 Gladius, but it's not that much lighter. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's a really nice saber overall. Let's do a size comparison as well, very, very quick, and then we wrap it up. So we have done that, and let's see. So just for fun and giggles, it's the V1 Gladius here, of course same size, everything, nothing special about it. And then we have the Ultra Sabers Aeon version 4. You can see it's lined up here. You can see it in the angle of the camera, but I reassure you, it's flat and it's all lined up with the pommels and the emitter. You can definitely see that the Ultra Sabers is quite a bit longer, but it's also thinner than both these Saberforge Gladiuses. So I hope you like this little review of the Saberforge Xiphos, one of those sabers you don't see too often. I would say it's a recast of this one, and it's an okay saber, but because it has these very clear marks of the halves on the sides, it just feels a little bit cheap, and I think that's why it was a free giveaway saber if you purchase something over $500 US. Nonetheless, a fun little saber. It's a little fun saber. So I hope you liked the review. Hopefully see you next time. Thank you very much for looking, and as always, stay scummy.